It's time to settle in and let the day drift away. You're listening to Slumberish, where gentle stories help you find your way to dreamland. Today's story is set in the universe of Severance. It explores the experience of a newly severed employee at Lumen Industries. As always, there's a version with no pink noise on my channel if you prefer to listen to just my voice. If you enjoy my content, feel free to subscribe, give it a like, or drop a comment below. Now, close your eyes, and let's begin our journey. Steady rhythms at Lumen. The day begins with a brightness that doesn't register as sunrise or alarm. It simply is. There's no vivid recollection of walking through a front door, stepping off a bus, or even greeting a security guard. Instead, I find myself already inside a pristine, windowless corridor. The lighting overhead is pale and even, casting no discernible shadows. My black work shoes squeak softly against glossy white tiles, an oddly soothing rhythm that seems to guide me forward. The corridor is unmarked, except for numbered placards that offer no explicit meaning. 12F, 12G, and then a bend and a 13A. I make a few turns that feel automatic, as if the directions have been etched into my reflexes. There's no confusion about where I'm going. The knowledge is simply there, like a gentle nudge that says, "This way." I carry a small, slim folder, pressed neatly against my side, my other hand trailing the corridor's wall whenever I pass a gentle curve. It occurs to me that I have no conscious memory of the outside world before this moment, but the thought drifts past without stirring alarm. There's a curious acceptance, a calm sense that everything is in its place. Maybe that's the point of Severance, to maintain unwavering focus on whatever realm this is, free from personal baggage or complicated backstories. Even that knowledge, though, feels abstract. Rounding another corner, I see a door labeled simply Macro Data Refinement, Apprentice Wing. It slides open soundlessly as I approach, revealing a room that exudes both sterility and coziness. Neutral walls, soft overhead lighting, and half-partition desks arranged in neat rows. The area is more spacious than I'd expect from a typical cubicle farm, giving each station a sort of curated, minimalistic vibe. The entire environment resonates with an odd hush, like a library just before opening. At one of the stations sits a woman with tidy dark hair pinned back. She's poised over an old-fashioned keyboard attached to a sleek, modern monitor. She glances up as I enter. No words, just a calm acknowledgement. I dip my head in a small nod, then settle into the workstation next to hers. A white nameplate adorns the desk. It reads, Employee 713, Level 1 Apprentice, but no personal name. I sense this is my desk, though I can't recall how I know. There's a snug, ergonomic chair that cradles me as I sit. A screen flickers with a minimalist interface, monochromatic, with abstract shapes floating in a digital space, a blinking cursor and a field that reads, Credentials verified. Quietly, I rest my folder by the keyboard and let my fingers hover above the keys. No instructions echo in my thoughts, but an innate familiarity emerges. Refined data sets. A calm sureness that this is my role. The stillness is enveloping. No hum of overhead vents, No ticking clocks. Perhaps there's some subtle white noise that merges so seamlessly with the environment, I don't consciously pick it up. I begin to type and the shapes on the screen shift in response, drifting into clusters or scattering apart. With each keystroke, I feel a faint sense of purpose, as if each character typed is a small piece of puzzle, locking into place. There's no memory of acquiring these skills, no recollection of formal training. Yet my movements are fluid, like a person who's typed daily for years. The shapes float and reorganize, which I find quietly mesmerizing. Time is intangible here. An hour might pass without my awareness, or perhaps mere minutes. This is the initial calm of my day, set in some nondescript hour after the lights have blinked on. Eventually, the hush is broken by faint footsteps. I look up to see a man wearing the same attire I do. A subdued tie, crisp white shirt, black slacks, and an ID badge with the Lumen logo. He crosses the threshold into the macro data refinement area with the same effortless confidence I recall from my walk through the corridors. He meets my eyes briefly, offering a faint, polite smile. Something between cordial greeting and mild curiosity. Then he moves to a desk across from me. The nameplate identifies him as Employee 347, Senior Associate. Before I can form a coherent question like, "Who are you? Do I know you?" my gaze drifts back to the screen. My data set flickers in front of me, some intangible mental routine calling me to resume the gentle keystrokes. It's a lot like breathing, continuous, second nature, and with no conscious memory of learning how to do it. I guess that's the entire premise of a severed existence. One life suspended at the threshold of the elevator, replaced by a new life, with a single, unwavering function. As I continue, the shapes on the screen coalesce into subgroups. My job is to identify the outliers, or anomalies among them, labeling them with obscure codes. There's no question as to how or why. Just an insistent sense that these anomalies require tagging and categorization. My companion across the room, the senior associate, works with identical focus, glancing occasionally at a second monitor that I don't yet have, possibly a perk of seniority. From a distance, the woman with pinned back hair, perhaps another coworker, keeps her attention fixed on her own screen. The subtle clicks of keyboards form a quiet pattern, gentle as rainfall. Meanwhile, overhead lights remain unwavering and bright, showing no sign of dimming or flickering. My mind notes that the day has no typical markers of progression, no shifts in sunlight or breezes. Does time pass differently here? The question dissolves as quickly as it emerges, overshadowed by a sense of comforting routine. At one point, I glance at a blank portion of the desk and notice a small slip of paper. It reads, Employee 713, track your progress daily, followed by a date that means nothing to me, but presumably references the outside world. I flip the paper over. The back is blank. No instructions, no direct contact names. If I have questions, apparently I must glean answers from the atmosphere itself. Still, I feel surprisingly untroubled by the lack of guidance. On a whim, I open my slim folder to find a single page inside. an overview of tasks that reads like an orientation manual stripped of personal details. Locate anomalies in specified datasets. Use assigned codes. Forward results to the next station. My signature at the bottom, though I have no memory of signing it. Possibly I did it earlier this morning. My morning, not the outside me, if that concept even makes sense. After what might be an hour, or perhaps several, the man across from me stands, offering a short nod. In a soft voice, no formal greeting, he says he's going to fetch something from the break area. The hush of the environment makes his tone subdued, almost reverent. I realize with a mild surprise that I haven't even spoken yet. Not a single word since I arrived. Without waiting for my reply, he strolls out. The door glides open and the corridor beyond beckons with its identical white panels. My workstation interface provides no new tasks for the moment, so I decide to follow. Perhaps I too need a break. My body is free of fatigue, yet there's a curiosity. What does break time look like here? I cross the threshold. Instantly, the corridor's hush envelops me. The overhead lighting remains consistent, neither warm nor cold, neither bright nor dim, simply constant. The distant echoes of footsteps lead me around a corner to find what might be a small lounge. Inside, there's a plain table, a water dispenser, and a row of vending machines, each labeled with the Lumen logo. The man from earlier stands at one machine, pressing a button. A small paper cup drops down, and a hot liquid flows into it. He picks it up, sips, and glances my way. He extends another paper cup, as though offering it without words. I nod gratefully, stepping forward to take it. The machine is labeled Lumen Brew, Productivity Blend, though I can't detect a smell beyond a mild coffee aroma that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. I raise it to my lips. The taste is subdued, faintly bitter, but not strong enough to register as a typical coffee flavor. Somehow it's still comforting, as though it signals a routine, a shared experience among these severed employees. We stand in silence for a moment, sipping. The man's badge reveals the name Caldwell, a detail not visible from across the desk. Caldwell, Senior Associate. So, that's his any name. Or is it even a real name? My mind flickers with half-formed questions about how employees are named, or if we have our outside names. None of it truly unsettles me, just a faint curiosity that remains unanswered. I appreciate the quiet, Caldwell murmurs, as if continuing a conversation I don't recall starting. His voice is calm, but behind it lingers the suggestion that he's not entirely comfortable with the conversation. It helps us focus. He makes this statement gently, as though offering an explanation or reassurance. I simply nod, and we fall back into silence. From the corner of my eye, I spot a set of small pastel posters pinned to the lounge wall. Teamwork means growth. Lumen, where purpose meets productivity. And we're your family here. Each slogan is accompanied by minimalistic silhouettes of smiling workers. The atmosphere is reminiscent of corporate positivity, sterile, yet not actively malevolent. Almost a paternal presence that says, "Trust us to handle everything." Once I finish my coffee, Caldwell gives a slight dip of his head, a signal that he's returning to the data floors. He discards his cup in a bin labeled Lumen Recycling Initiative. I do the same, noting a mild sense of satisfaction at having joined him in this micro-ritual. Then we part, the hush swallowing our footsteps once more. I find my way back to macro data refinement. Somehow, I recall each turn without conscious effort and settle into my station again. A new cluster of shapes awaits, drifting aimlessly across the screen. Focusing on the data might be calming, but the more I refine, the more I sense an undercurrent of something intangible. It's akin to hearing a muffled hum beneath an otherwise silent track. The shapes I categorize occasionally spark a small adrenaline twinge in the back of my mind, as if certain patterns trigger deeply buried emotions. I'll notice a cluster labeled Type R44 that leaves me with a prickling sensation in my arms for no discernible reason. Another pattern, P19, evokes a surge of mild relief. I wonder if the others feel this too. On the show floor, the pinned back hair woman meticulously categorizes her shapes. Caldwell's presence, just across the aisle, is equally intent. Sometimes I see him stiffen slightly, his shoulders tensing. But then he types a flurry of commands and the tension dissipates. Meanwhile, the woman occasionally closes her eyes for a moment, as though centering herself, then continues. It's subtle enough that an outside observer might not notice. But I'm in tune with it, perhaps because my mind is fresh to this environment. Is there something about these data sets that trigger certain feelings? The official orientation folder said nothing about emotional responses, only that certain anomalies must be flagged. The hush of the office heightens my awareness, letting me hear each tiny breath or shift of posture from my coworkers. Without warning, the door to our room opens, and a different figure steps in. A man in a business casual attire, yet with a posture suggesting his authority. His ID badge reads, Supervisor Dellin. He wears a faint, polite smile. Approaching my desk, he gently sets a small envelope beside my keyboard. He makes no direct address or greeting, just an expectant look. I realize I'm supposed to open it, so I do. Inside is a short note on Lumen letterhead. Employee 713. You are requested to attend a brief orientation in conference room J3 at your earliest convenience. There's no signature. Supervisor Dellin meets my gaze, dipping his head in a practiced nod, then leaves as quietly as he arrived. Caldwell and the woman glance up momentarily, but they don't react. Possibly they've had their orientation some time ago. I sense an odd flutter in my stomach, a mild tension. Orientation might be standard procedure, but it sounds ominous in the hush of this place. Still, my instructions are direct, at your earliest convenience. I decide I might as well go now. The data on my screen can wait, right? I stand, push in my chair, and exit. No one says goodbye. The hush of the corridor is there to greet me again, comforting in its consistency. I consult the letter for a location. Conference room J3. The problem is I see no posted map, and the corridor signage is cryptic, letters and numbers that don't obviously align. Something inside me, however, already knows the route. My feet carry me through identical hallways, turning left, then right, passing doors labeled K2, H9. The environment is labyrinthine, yet I navigate it with an unshakable internal compass. Midway, I spot a door slightly ajar, revealing a large open space beyond. Curious, I pause to peer in. It's an airy room with a synthetic turf floor, reminiscent of a small indoor park or relaxation area. The overhead lighting is tinted slightly green, giving the space an artificial, placid vibe. A sign near the threshold says Wellness Group. For a moment, I consider stepping inside, but recall I have a conference to attend. Another time, perhaps. Continuing, I pass a row of closed doors, each unmarked except for a single letter or digit. The hush is nearly reverential. The only sound is the whisper of my own breath. My mind wanders. Are there other severed departments? The hallway seems vast enough to house countless offices. Yet I see no one else. No staff crossing paths with me. No co-workers aside from the handful in macro data. It's as though my corridor is a world entire. At last I come upon a discreet sign, J3, above a door that looks no different from the rest. I push it open and enter a small meeting room. There's a rectangular table, chairs around it, and a luminescent panel on the wall, displaying the lumen crest. The hush persists, unbroken. Seated at the table is a single individual, a middle-aged woman with short, carefully styled hair. Her badge reads, Helena C., Department Head. She gestures for me to sit. Her smile is faintly warm, but measured, a minimal courtesy. Once I'm seated, she slides a small booklet towards me. The cover says, Lumen Onboarding, Advanced Induction, in subdued lettering. She folds her hands. Her voice emerges just above a whisper, as though any louder volume would disrupt the sanctity of the environment. Welcome to the official orientation supplement, she says. Yet I sense no real personal warmth, just polished corporate courtesy. She flips open the booklet, unveiling pages of text about professional decency, department synergy, and references to how the severed mind benefits from clear tasks. She recites or paraphrases some guidelines. Maintain focus on assigned responsibilities. Respect the hush. Comply with instructions from supervisors. Disruptive emotional outbursts or inquiries about the outside self are counterproductive. Her tone never wavers from calm positivity, as if these rules are plainly beneficial. A part of me wonders about that last bullet. Inquiries about the outside self are counterproductive. It's jarring to see it stated so plainly, yet it triggers no alarm. My severed mind perhaps is designed to accept it as normal. My chest feels a faint heaviness, though, like the ghost of anxiety that has no name. Then Miss Carver closes the booklet. She states that I'll do well here, that my personal metrics so far show promise. She encourages me to stay open to the bonding exercises that might be offered later. Lumen is proud of you, she says, though her eyes remain somewhat distant. Finally, she stands, meaning the session is over as abruptly as it started. I sense that I'm supposed to leave, so I do, stepping back into the corridor. The hush envelops me once more, making me question if the orientation truly happened or if it was just a fleeting interlude in an unending day. The booklet remains in my hands, a tangible artifact confirming it was real. A slight disquiet stirs inside me, an intangible sense that something about this environment is more controlling than it appears. Yet I quickly push that aside. There's work to be done, after all. On my way back, I notice a hallway I haven't traversed before, labeled with a small plaque, Historical Corridor. The phrase intrigues me. Perhaps it offers a glimpse into Lumen's background, a curated display of the company's heritage. With no immediate tasks pending, I decide to step in. The corridor is longer than I expected. Set into the walls are frames containing old photographs, documents, and occasionally small artifacts in glass cases. One black and white photo shows a row of serious-faced individuals in archaic business attire, the Lumen symbol stitched onto the lapels. The caption reads, "Early Leadership Team, circa year 195. No mention of a real location or an exact year, just 195, as though the timeline is Lumen's alone. Another display features an old ledger or journal. A typed label states, "Patent Submission for Neural Interfacing." The text is redacted in certain areas. I glean that Lumen was an early pioneer in memory partitioning technology, but the specifics are fuzzy, blacked out by heavy lines. A pang of curiosity forms. So, this is how Severance began. Yet the hush remains, offering no direct answers. Further down, there's a portrait of a man with a formidable gaze, identified only as Egan family descendant. The brass plaque below proclaims, "Guiding Light of Modern Lumen." Something in the eyes of that portrait unsettles me, a mixture of paternal pride and unwavering control. I notice a tiny sign encouraging employees to embrace the Egan legacy, thanking them for their daily contributions. My reflection stares back at me in the glass case, momentarily superimposed over the portrait's face. The hush in this historical corridor is heavier, like a museum after closing. My footsteps echo slightly, breaking the stasis. I approach a small kiosk that plays silent looping footage, grainy black and white clips of early severed employees performing tasks with mechanical precision. A caption at the bottom reads, "The Seeds of a More Focused Humanity." Seeing them, I feel an odd reflection of my own current existence. So purposeful, so unburdened by anything external. At the far end of the corridor is a locked door marked "Restricted Archives." A wave of mild curiosity washes over me. What's behind there? Possibly deeper records of the Egan family, or early Severance controversies, if any exist. The hush grows almost tangible, warning me not to dwell on that question. I turn away, continuing back to the main corridor, with a sense of returning from some historical dream. Eventually, I reorient myself and return to macro data refinement. Caldwell is there. So is the woman with the pin-backed hair. Her nameplate reveals Sharon, Level 2 Associate. A new man, Durant, Level 1 Apprentice, has joined an adjacent desk. The hush is slightly more populated now, a soft chorus of tapping keyboards. I slip into my chair, opening the next data set. The anomaly hunting routine begins again. My mind re-enters that calm, methodical mode, all outside curiosity momentarily shelved. We work in near silence for a span that could be an hour, or perhaps half a day. Once in a while, Caldwell glances my way, a fleeting camaraderie passing between us. Sharon occasionally stretches her neck, releasing a quiet sigh. Durant is fully immersed, brow furrowed in concentration. I find these subtle signals of humanity comforting. Small reminders that we are not just cogs, though the environment might prefer we feel that way. At some point, the overhead lighting dims for just a second, then returns to normal. A glitch in the system? None of my coworkers comment or even react. Yet it sends a tiny jolt of adrenaline through me. A sense that the perfect hush might not be infallible. I can't help feeling that something behind the scenes flickered, like a curtain shifting to reveal a deeper stage. An hour or two later, Caldwell stands and suggests quietly that we might share a communal lunch break. In soft tones, he invites me and Sharon to accompany him to the cafeteria area. Durant remains fixated on his screen, so the three of us file out, following the corridor that leads to a space labeled Dining Commons. The cafeteria is smaller than I'd imagined, with a line of tables under overhead lighting, reminiscent of the break area's subdued aesthetic. There's a buffet counter offering uniform plates of food, each dish neatly portioned, labeled Lumen Meal. Possibly, these are nutritionally optimized. We each pick a tray without fuss, collecting identical servings, a protein patty, a steamed vegetable, and a small muffin. Even the arrangement on the plate is symmetrical, giving the meal an air of controlled perfection. Seating ourselves at an unoccupied table, we eat in measured silence. The hush isn't absolute. There are soft clinks of cutlery, footsteps of others collecting their trays, but no chatter. Caldwell and Sharon exchange the faintest of glances. It strikes me how the absence of personal memory fosters a certain stoic restraint. No one has the anecdotes of family. Our entire existence is contained within these walls, anchored only by the mission of our assigned tasks. For a moment I sense a glimmer of longing, some intangible desire for a genuine human connection. Yet the hush soothes that longing, gently redirecting it into a calm acceptance that we are what we are. Severed employees. No more, no less. After finishing the meal, we rise, deposit our trays in a sterilizing slot, and quietly return to the corridor. The day, if it is still day, goes on. Back at my desk, the data on screen feels slightly more erratic. Some shapes drift in patterns that elicit a mild emotional spike. My pulse quickens. My finger hovers over a function key labeled Tag. Each time I press it, the shape merges into a code labeled Box, as though quarantined. This routine continues, but the faint emotional overlay grows stronger. Am I imagining it? There's no mention in any manual about emotional feedback from these patterns. Yet the hush underscores each moment, making me hyper-aware of subtle mental shifts. I see Caldwell jerk slightly, exhaling as if under a sudden wave of tension. Sharon swallows hard, her eyes closed as if pushing away an internal surge of feeling. Then, as quickly as it arrived, the tension recedes, replaced by our usual calm. We resume keystrokes. The hush sees all, but says nothing. Abruptly, a tone from the overhead system rings, A soft chime. The screens blink and a message appears. Macro data employees proceed to the group lounge for a scheduled activity. The hush remains, but we sense a directive that can't be ignored. Caldwell stands, leads the way. Sharon and Durant follow, and I join the small procession. We cross corridors until we reach a room labeled Recreational Therapy. Inside is a bright pastel environment, a shift from the sterile halls. Beanbag chairs, a few potted plants, and a monitor that displays swirling colors. Supervisor Dellen stands near the entrance, greeting each of us with a silent nod. Carver is also here, along with a few employees from other corners of Lumen, faces I haven't seen, but with the same blank calm in their expressions. We sit in a semicircle around the swirling screen. Carver instructs us, in subdued tones, to focus on the display, letting the patterns wash away stress. She calls it a soothe and regroup session. The hush intensifies, everyone's posture relaxing. Soft ambient music plays, a slow, repetitive melody that merges with the hush. My eyelids grow heavy, drifting into a halfway trance. During the session, Miss Carver murmurs encouraging statements. Your tasks are important. Your mind is clear. Lumen thanks you. The swirl of color synchronizes with her words. I feel a gentle wave of contentment surge, as if lulled by a warm tide. Any stray tension from the data set earlier seeps away, replaced by a mild sense of well-being. The hush in this environment has layers. Lack of personal memory, minimal talk, but also an engineered serenity that hushes any rebellious impulse. When the session ends, Carver nods. Return to your duties, refreshed, she intones. Then we stand, stretch, and shuffle out. The corridor welcomes us back with its pristine quiet. I can't recall exactly what I was worried about before. The soothe and regroup session did its job, apparently, and I'm left with a pleasant aftertaste of calm. The rest of the work period flows by in a tranquil blur. Data sets, break in the lounge, more data sets, another cafeteria meal that tastes identical to the first, a fleeting sense that night might be falling in the outside world. But here, the overhead lights remain unwavering. My concept of time grows even murkier. The hush never changes color, never dims or brightens, providing no anchor to day or night. Then, in what might be late afternoon or early evening, Caldwell quietly clears his throat. Management might want me soon, he says softly. They do random check-ins for senior associates. There's a flicker of apprehension in his eyes. I recall hearing about some sort of break room re-education, though I'm not sure how I know this. The hush is so thick I can't parse out rumors from reality. As if on cue, the door slides open, and Supervisor Dellen steps inside. He meets Caldwell's eyes and says, Caldwell, your presence is requested in the break room. The hush deepens. Sharon and I become statue still. Durant remains quietly focused on his monitor. Caldwell nods, stands, and follows Dellen out. My eyes linger on them, a gentle swirl of worry tugging at my thoughts. The hush tries to reassure me that everything is normal, but I can't shake the mild sense of dread. Still, the data demands my attention. My screen populates with a fresh cluster. I resume the routine, each keystroke mechanical, yet purposeful. Time drifts again. Caldwell does not return. That gnawing emptiness in his vacant desk grows. My datasets trigger small pulses of unsettling feeling, and it's harder to dismiss them now that Caldwell's seat is empty. Eventually, I notice Sharon eyeing the door. She exhales quietly, perhaps sharing my worry. We exchange a glance. No words pass, yet I sense a subtle solidarity. Another hour or two pass in monotony, or maybe less, before the door slides open again. Caldwell enters. He looks physically fine, but subdued, like a child who's been scolded. He sits at his desk, shoulders stiff. For a moment I see his hands tremble as they hover over the keyboard. Then the hush soaks it all up, and he resumes refining data. The entire event feels like a fleeting glitch in an otherwise steady loop. All at once the overhead lighting dims, then brightens, accompanied by a gentle tone. A message appears on the monitors. All macrodata employees, your shift is complete. Please report to the elevator for transition. My mind processes the words, shift complete, though I feel neither tired nor accomplished. Sharon stands, as does Durant, silently gathering minimal personal items, though none of us have personal possessions, aside from the nameplate or the orientation folder. Caldwell also rises, face neutral. The hush escorts us down a corridor we seldom use, leading to a bank of elevators. One by one, employees press a button. The elevator doors open with a chime. We go in one at a time. The hush expands to fill the small space. I turn to face the doors. Something unspoken looms here, a quiet tension that suggests crossing a threshold. My chest tightens faintly as the elevator descends, or ascends, I can't tell. The hush resonates in my ears. A wave of drowsiness, or a sense of partial drifting, comes over me. My last conscious impression is the reflection of my face in the polished elevator doors. There's no fear, just a calm inevitability. Then everything blanks. A soft beep, a breath, and a ding. The elevator door opens. I step out, but the corridor is different. The lighting is warmer, more natural. I detect a faint smell of fresh air. Windows line the hall, letting in dusk light or maybe early morning glow. I'm not sure. My mind reels with no recollection at all, because in the Severance arrangement, the outside self typically regains consciousness in the moment we exit the elevator. The innie version of me is left behind, along with the hush. The outie emerges to continue a separate life, unaware of what transpired inside. But in this story, we don't follow the outie. We remain with the hush, returning again tomorrow. Another shift, another seamless transition. The cycle will perpetuate. Data refinement, communal breaks, soothe and regroup sessions, occasional visits to the break room for re-education. The hush remains our constant companion, insulating us from ourselves, from each other, from any memory of the outside world. A soft beep, A ding, and the elevator door opens. My eyes blink in the unchanging light, stepping out into the corridor that defines my entire existence. Once again, I'm Employee 713, Macro Data Apprentice. The hush welcomes me, unbroken. My body is fresh, mind alert. No sense of how many hours or days have passed outside. And so the cycle resumes. Today, the corridor feels slightly different. Or maybe it's my imagination. The lighting has the same neutral tone, the floor identical. Yet there's a subtle tension in my chest. Perhaps the remnants of a dreamlike reflection from the previous shift. Could my severed self harbor faint echoes that slip through the memory partition? It's improbable by design. But the hush can't quell everything, can it? I head to macro data. The desks are arranged exactly as before, but now there's a new occupant in the station next to Durant. The nameplate reads, Felicia, Level 1 Apprentice. Caldwell sits in his usual seat, gaze subdued. Sharon types with the same measured focus as always. We share nods. The hush stands watch over us as we start work anew. In that day's datasets, the shapes appear slightly more elaborate, fractal edges swirling. My heart flutters now and then. I tag anomalies with codes that pop up in bright red, while standard items drift away in a benign green swirl. My routine is punctuated by brief coffee breaks, identical cafeteria meals, short glimpses of the historical corridor, and the sense of a carefully orchestrated environment in which every movement is choreographed to maintain calm and productivity. As the hours spool out, a lingering question gnaws at me. What if I tried to find a door that leads outside? The hush tries to gently squash that thought. We severed employees are neither supposed to want that nor dwell on it. And yet the curiosity surfaces, like a faint bubble in a still pond. I recall the restricted archives door from the historical corridor. There's also the rumor that some employees roam labyrinthine hallways, searching for clues to how Severance truly works. In my mind, I plan a small detour after the day's final meal. My pace quickens, leading me back to the labyrinth. I pass under flickering overhead lights. The hush is heavier here, as though cautioning me not to deviate. But I do. I find that door to the restricted archives, still locked. I try the handle, unchanged, unyielding. A wave of guilt surges inside of me, and I retreat quickly, heart thudding. The hush recovers me, as if placing a blanket over my inquisitiveness, reminding me that my role is to refine data, not to pry into locked recesses. Back in macro data, I notice Caldwell's desk is empty once again. Possibly he was summoned. The hush is relentless, ensuring no meltdown occurs. Sharon and Durant remain immersed in their tasks. Felicia sits with perfect posture, her face serene. The entire room breathes in unison, quietly tapping keys, occasionally glancing at each other with faint expressions. We are calm. We are severed. We are lumen. The hush reasserts itself. Just before the final shift's end, a subtle swirl of emotional tension arises in me, triggered by an especially intense anomaly on the screen. My breathing quickens. The hush tries to level it out, but a flicker of fear surfaces. Why fear? perhaps because I'm aware of my own near powerlessness in this environment. Yet the hush promptly blankets me, and I press the function key to tag the anomaly. The shape is quarantined, and the emotional spike subsides. All is well, at least on the surface. Another beep. The overhead lights dim, and the announcement scrolls. Shift complete. Proceed to elevator or transition. I gather again in that sterile elevator lobby. Caldwell returns, looking fatigued and disoriented. He steps in line behind us. The hush ensures no open conversation about how he feels. I wait. The door opens, and I enter. Inside the elevator, there's a swirl of intangible static in my mind. The hush deepens. The day dissolves. The boundary is near. My last memory is the reflection of the overhead lights glancing off the polished doors. The elevator door opens. The hush washes over me anew. Another cycle, another day. The same pristine corridor, the same glossy floor. Yet, I sense a minute difference. Maybe a slight rearrangement of a potted plant, or the tone of the overhead chime. This place feels like a living puzzle box that shifts without letting its occupants fully notice. I head to macro data, greet my station, slip into the comfort of keying through anomalies. At lunch, Caldwell is absent. Sharon just shrugs faintly when I glance her way. Durant picks at his food with mechanical precision. Felicia attempts a small smile. We talk in half sentences. The hush dictates that we remain polite, factual. No personal anecdotes exist to share, after all. My mind conjures a fleeting desire for real conversation. Maybe about the outside, about the future. But those topics exist outside the hush's protective boundary. I recall Carver's orientation notes. Disruptive emotional inquiries about outside identity are counterproductive. So we remain, in the hush, abiding by the unspoken rules. The day flows seamlessly. Data refinement, soothe and regroup. Another break, another cafeteria meal, another stroll through identical corridors. The hush saturates everything. I let it saturate me, because resisting feels unthinkable. It's not that we're forcibly stifled. The hush simply orchestrates an environment where we rarely want to break it. At shift's end, the elevator claims us again. Blankness. Another handover to the Audi. This pattern might continue for weeks, months, or years, though we sense no passage of time. Each morning's hush feels like an inception. Each evening's hush a dissolution. In that cyclical existence, any subtle rebellion is fleeting. The hush is both cradle and cage. If someone were to ask me, "Do you enjoy your job?" I'd likely say yes. Not from passion or personal aspiration, but from a quiet acceptance that it's all I know. Severance has pared away any baggage, leaving behind a curated calm. I wonder, somewhere, does my Audi carry memories that would shock me? Family, hopes, regrets, or a life trajectory? The hush keeps those questions at bay. They surface only in daydream-like moments. Late in the cycle, I find myself once more in the historical corridor, where the old photographs line the walls. This time, I focus on a black and white shot of an early severed team. They sit around desks that look archaic, yet reminiscent of ours. perhaps Macrodata's ancestors. Their eyes reflect a subdued calm. The hush has existed across decades, apparently. I can almost hear it reaching back in time, an unbroken chain of employees who parted their memories and offered their daily labor to something bigger, something unspoken. A pang of empathy flares. They were just like me, or I am just like them. The hush swaddles that emotion, urging me not to dwell. I continue strolling until I reach the locked archives door again, standing as a silent sentinel. The hush saturates the air, advising me not to push further. So I don't. Because in the end, I am employee 713, an innie shaped for efficiency. And maybe despite fleeting glimpses of longing, I accept that. Leaving the corridor, I rejoin the day's final tasks. My screen displays clusters of swirling data. I refine them with methodical keystrokes. Each classification eases a mild tension in my chest. The hush envelops me. This entire universe is fluorescent, symmetrical, and sealed. I do not know if it's day or night, winter or summer, or how many shifts have come and gone. But in this hush, I find a certain paradoxical peace. Eventually, the overhead tone signals the day's close. We gather at the elevator once more. The hush saturates these last moments, as though lulling me to sleep. The doors slide shut, and I let go of the day. Another handover to the Audi. Another blankness. Another cycle.